Black box testing. Black box testing, also known as behavioral testing, is a software testing method in which the internal structure, design, and implementation of the item being tested is not known to the tester. These test cases can be functional or non-functional, though typically they are functional. There are a few goals of black box testing. First is to find incorrect or missing functions. Second is to find interface errors. Third is to find errors in the data structures or external database access. Fourth is to find behavior or performance errors. And fifth is to find initialization and termination errors. There are various techniques to black box testing. There's equivalence testing, decision table testing, graph-based testing, boundary value analysis, error guessing, comparison testing, state transition testing, and use case technique. For this presentation, we will show an example of decision table testing and state transitioning testing. Decision table testing should be used whenever there are logical conditions or decision-making steps. So if a condition is equal to true, then execute action 1, else action 2, and the condition is false. The test should then identify two outputs, such as action 1 or action 2, for two conditions. Is the condition met? If so, then it is true. Otherwise, it is false. Here is a graph showing a decision table for a bank that provides an interest rate for the male senior citizen at 10% and for the rest of the population at 9%. In this example, condition 1, C1, is the client male, has two values as true and two values as false. For condition 2, C2, is the client a senior citizen? It also has two values as true and two as false. That makes the total possible combinations of 4. We can then derive test cases using this decision table. In state transition testing, the test case tries to test the system under different states. This state can change depending upon different conditions or events. These events or conditions then create scenarios for a tester to test. State transition diagrams give clear views of the state changes, but are really only practical for simple applications. This diagram shows the possible scenarios where a tester would try to log into a home page. As you can see, there are multiple paths that the user could take.
Now we will talk about the effectiveness of the black box testing method. You want to use the black box testing technique when you are dealing with a lot of conditional statements in your system, because it's easy to write black box testing cases for those if statements. Also, when you want to focus on the specific functional requirements of the system. It's also good because you get an abstraction from the code and you can focus specifically on the testing effort and on the system behavior without having to look at the code. It also helps testing the communication between modules or different components of the system and how they work together. It's also good when budget or resources are low. You don't have to pay someone that knows how to code or knows a lot about a specific programming language to do the black box testing. You can really just get anyone to run through a few test cases. And you want to use black box when you want to focus on the user experience. It is not a good idea to use the black box testing technique when you need to focus on the internal architecture and workings of the system, and when you need to validate the cleanliness of the code. You may also want to choose another technique when you need to focus on the performance of the system under certain constraints or circumstances, and you also have the option to use other techniques when you have more available resources like test engineers that know how to code, and if you have more available budget.
Some of the advantages of black box testing are tests are done from a user's point of view and will help in exposing discrepancies in the specifications. The tester doesn't need to know the programming language being used or how the software has been implemented. Tests can be conducted by a third party or group that is independent from the developers, allowing for an objective perspective and the avoidance of developer bias. Black box testing does not go into the details of coding. It mainly focuses on testing and validating the behavior and functionality of the software. There is no need for any technical background, and testing can be started as soon as the development of the project is done. It is more effective for large applications where functionality matters more than code. It also helps in identifying defects and issues in the early stage of testing. A retest can be done to verify if issues still persist after initial testing and corrections are completed.
There are a few disadvantages to black box testing. First, since the testers lack technical or programming knowledge, there's a chance that possible conditions of a scenario might not be tested. Second, it can take the tester a large amount of time to test all possible inputs and their outputs. Third, it is not possible to have complete test coverage for large and complex projects using black box testing. Fourth, if the project does not have clear specifications, black box test cases will be very difficult to design. Fifth, only a small number of possible inputs can be tested, which will leave many program paths untested. Sixth, the tests can be redundant if the software developer has already run a test case. Thank you for listening to our presentation on black box testing. Please see below for all of our work cited.